Today, I have something special for you. I got a liberal named Hutch. I have a leftist named Straighterade, or Aaron. They are both in the Twitch and YouTube political scene, and they are debating ContraPoints and everybody treating ContraPoints poorly in reference to her takes on Israel-Palestine. I do expect it to get a little bit spicy because for the life of me, Aaron / Straighterade supports / likes Hassan Piker / the hard left, which drives me absolutely insane. So I expect to pause every 5 minutes or so and criticize these folks. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get them on our screen with audio so we can enjoy their argumentation. The good news is that these people are actually relatively smart, so we shouldn't be taking that much psychic damage today. That's a good change of pace for us.
Apply to misinterpreted her post altogether to mean or to suggest that she was telling them to not do any activism, but there's nothing even remotely hinting that in her post. What she was drawing an issue with was a particular kind of activism that mandated anti-Zionism as a part of a necessary component of Palestinian advocacy. Why don't you introduce yourself for people in my audience that don't know who you are?
Yeah, so I'm at Straighterade _ on everything. I'm a political React live streamer, do commentary, react to whatever I want. Definitely on the left. I'd say I'm a communist, so joining.
I should talk to Straighterade. Why do you think a moneyless, stateless, classless society is the ideal for human civilization? Why? Why would that not create a series of degenerate, genetic dead end bed blob freaks? Please tell me.
The ranks of all of like a leftist Twitch poll or whatever, but
and all those people in leftist Twitch polls suck so bad. Why would I ever want to be associated with them whatsoever? Bear in mind, every political tribe has a lot of people that suck ass, but I'm just saying the people in far left Twitch politics suck particularly hard.
Yeah, always a good time. I like fighting with liberals. I agree on a lot of shit with liberals. I do think that the left should work with liberals. I do think that the left should participate in electoralism. I think it would be like my dream would be, you know how the right has like all of this discipline among like evangelicals, like every single election they like show up to the ballot box and they like are a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah.
And their party has to pay attention to them. If the left had that sort of discipline, we would see AOCs and Zoran Mamdani wins across the country, and it would be awesome. We wouldn't have to just be reveling in like these, singular wins or these like really, really small wins. And I'm seeing a lot of the same people who are not so gung-ho about electoralism be like, yeah, Zoran's like, look at like we won. And I'm like, but you don't really care about elections usually. So why are you so excited? Or like, why are you taking credit for this? Because this is something you've discouraged people from doing, or have kind of suggested that it's futile to participate in it, when that's the opposite of how, amassing power in a political movement works and extracting concessions from politicians. You have to show up.
Ooh, Aaron understands electoral politics. Nice. So Dark King 360 says the Britney session yesterday turned my IQ to Play-Doh. You're not alone. Okay, you're not alone. I think that actually damaged me, which is why I wanted to talk about it. But yes, it hurt me. For those of you who don't know, we did a breakdown of Brittany Simon yesterday, criticizing ContraPoints and Destiny. To be fair, I thought it would be a bigger segment than it ended up being. But truth be told, she took a long time to get where she needed to go. And then her criticisms were so dumb that they sucked. So I get it. My instincts for content aren't always going to be perfect. But what I appreciate about Erin so far, despite the fact that she is a leftist communist and in a civil war between communist, fascists, and liberals, I'm going to side with the liberals and kill all the communists and all the fascists, including Erin if I need to, in self-defense, of course. But what I appreciate about what Erin just said is that one of my criticisms of Brittany Simon yesterday was that she didn't know what politics was. She thought politics was having the correct opinions. Aaron is actually stating, like, no, we need to be involved in electoralism and achieve maximal advantage for our political faction, because that's what politics is. This is so stupidly obvious to anybody with an IQ over 90 that even though we are opposed ideologically, I appreciate the fact that she's at least smart enough to recognize what the game is. That's actually, believe it or not, it's a very low bar, but it's a bar that she's just passed. Mega Zero says, you're going to want to jump like an hour and a half in to get to the ContraPoint stuff. Well, let's give them like, 10, 20 minutes to warm up, and then we'll jump ahead to 90 minutes if we need to. Matter of fact, let's check. Hutch was polite enough to do chapters, so maybe you're right. Maybe we'll skip ahead for the chapters. Zoran Mamdani and Democrats. Was Bernie screwed out of the nomination? We can skip that for sure. I don't care about that. Obama in the ACA, that could be a little interesting, and then the ContraPoints debate. We'll watch the beginning part for tactics and strategy, because it seems like she's willing to talk about that, and then we'll skip the Bernie chapter, because truth be told, I don't give a shit about that. I don't care at all. Sorry.
And you have to make your voice known. You have to be organized and disciplined. It's not always fun because you don't get everything that you want. But you should not just cede that territory to liberals or people that, again, did not do everything that they could to say that people needed to mobilize and vote against Trump by any means necessary, are complaining about Trump. And I'm glad to hear them, hold Trump accountable and criticize Trump. But I feel like to the extent that they had a hand in being able to do something about it, I don't understand how they reconcile these positions, Yeah,
I think because you have that position, you're automatically in a totally different camp from the people that I normally argue with.
True.
Because as long as anybody takes the electoral system seriously in a meaningful sense, and by that I mean like voting for a Democrat, basically. Because if you vote third party, you're just wasting your vote, and if you abstain, so those are two examples.
Although with ranked choice voting becoming relevant in New York, it's actually crazy how relevant third parties became, because there's no way. So if we went through a typical party nomination system, Zoran Mamdani would not be the chosen Democrat primary person, right? So yeah. Because people actually, I like ranked choice voting. I think it's great because there are third parties that would gain more political relevance, but people pick between the binaries of the two-party system because they know that the third party is not going to win or get close. But with ranked choice voting, you can say, this is my ideal person. Honestly, I would probably pick a substantive amount of like libertarians and conservatarians that are third party independent or third party libertarian. And then I would pick a Republican if Republicans weren't insane, but Republicans have totally lost their mind. So after that, I would probably pick like a normie liberal Dem. So it would probably be conservatarian, libertarian, liberal, then maybe like a more liberal Democrat, like a more lefty Democrat. Then after that, it would be like, conservative, fascist. And then at the end, it would be a communist. Communist is at the bottom of my list. If you're an open socialist, open communist, you're at the bottom of my list. So anyways, point being that, I'm okay with this. I'm okay with this.
Examples of what I would say are like meaningless engagements with electoralism, but anybody who takes the electoral process seriously, I already don't really have like that much of an issue with these people. And
all right, Wow Man said a good meme. What'll be your profession in the communist future? Anti-communist guerrilla terrorist. Yes.
And I can have like strong ideological differences with them. Like in your case, you say you're a communist, I'm a liberal. But I don't feel this like inherent sense of animosity towards you.
Probably because Aaron can carry a conversation, and also she recognizes the need for electoralism.
Econo Boy recently came out as a socialist, which was kind of surprising. But
gross.
Because
out of the closet.
Right, yeah. But because
socialist.
Exactly, yeah. He did it like a couple weeks ago, and then that got me interested. And so I watched a debate that he had with somebody maybe like 6 months ago where they were kind of diving into this stuff. And then I read his Substack article. So because I respect his intellect and because I know that he engages in electoral politics meaningfully, then it makes me open to maybe I get curious about like, oh, why do you believe that? And then and so there's that, yeah. But yeah, that's most of my smoke these days is I've just been getting down in the mud with folks that are not really interested in voting. You brought up like Zoran Mamdani, and I think like I think this is an exciting moment for progressives. It should be an exciting moment. This is the most populous city in the country, and this guy is like a straight up socialist, although during this election, he presented more as like a democratic socialist. And I think that is a W, but what I'm seeing is a bit like, I feel like I'm seeing some premature victory laps. Like, I feel like I'm seeing people assuming that because he won, that this is like a definite sign that he's heralding in this kind of new paradigm of American politics that's going to be explicitly socialist. And that could happen. I'm not saying it's impossible, but
dude, if we move to a place where politics is just explicitly socialist, where we have like Marxist Leninists and Maoists like running, where we have people who are like, yeah, decommodify basic human needs and workers own the means of production, then I am absolutely like reinforcing the center right, center left coalition, and we are running effectively like a New Deal program in order to stamp out this bullshit. Because I am not interested. I am not interested in the inequities of capitalism creating an underclass of like radicalized peasants who are capitalized on by communist revolutionaries and fascists. I'm not interested in that at all. Like, I know a lot of people hate FDR because he created all the social welfare programs that they say is like the stepping stone to socialism. But I'll tell you, the socialists hate FDR because they think he's the man who saved capitalism by creating the welfare state. I'm so done with this. I'm so annoyed that Reagan took a fire axe to social welfare, and then 2 generations later, the inequality between the classes is so great that we're looking at a massive dispossessed working class population that is clamoring for extremist politics. It's so predictable. It's so unbelievably predictable. God, I really, and that's where like libertarians, like I think libertarians can do good, but they also need to wake up and stop being so naive about the dynamics of economics and politics. Razzle, I wanted to address this, says she still hasn't made a statement about her role in the whole Pixie President Sunday thing before returning to streaming, as far as I know. Awkward at best, scummy at worst, in my opinion. I mean, I think it's probably awkward. She was probably trying to be too many people's friends all at the same time. So she was trying to be President Sunday's friend. She was trying to be Pixie's friend. She was trying to be Steven's friend. And so as a result, she was just going between the three and saying what each person not wanted to hear, but saying the thing that she knew that she could say as a friend. But as a result, because all three of those people had such contradictory motivations, President Sunday has always wanted to destroy Destiny. He's wanted to destroy Destiny for years now. Pixie was Destiny's friend, but got screwed over. And so as a result, she wanted to destroy Destiny. And then Destiny has kind of been an asshole sometimes and doesn't want to be destroyed. So these perspectives are contradictory, and you can't be a good friend to everybody. You can be a bad friend to everybody. You can't be a good friend to everybody. Kazuche says, these people are worse than MAGA. They don't have liberal values. These people should come to liberals. Who do you think have more votes in the Democratic Party, liberals or progressive lefties? Good news is probably liberals. Good news is probably liberals. Shadow 2 Bravo says RCV is evil and should be cast into the fires of hell. Whenever you say RCV, I think of like recoverable depreciation. So I actually have no idea who you're talking about. Mega Zero says Valor Media Networks, lol. So yeah, I tried watching this yesterday, but lost interest halfway through the ContraPoints stuff because it took so long to get there. Well, we'll fast forward. We'll fast forward. Dark King says, to summarize the Bernie part, Aaron thinks Bernie was cheated out of the 2020 nomination because moderates coalesced around the other moderate. Yeah, but that's what we should have done to Trump. We could have strangled, the Republican Party could have strangled Trump in the crib because 60% of the party did not want Trump. You can go back and you can check the 2016 results, but it was effectively the guy from Ohio, I forget his name, Marco Rubio, and somebody else. It was like Kasich, Rubio, and Huckabee split the moderate vote, and it was 60% of the party, but they stayed in until the end, and as a result, Trump won. And since Trump won, he dominated the party, skinned the party alive, and turned it into a monster. LB says, Connor, you tell me one program that Bernie Sanders... We already did that. I read the AOC thing, and I disagreed with 70% of the fucking platform, LB. I'm not doing that again. Thanks. Appreciate you. Well, QC John says, good morning, Connor and chat. How's everyone doing today? We're doing great. Dark King says, I have an inherent animosity to communists, lol. What they want to destroy liberal democracy. Yep. All right, anyways, back to it.
Feels
I
like
think it's important to neither understate nor overstate what his win means, because if you had told me last year, just like after Trump had lost, that like, did you know that New York City, the Democratic primary, would have all of these voters mobilized to go vote for somebody who is an open Democratic socialist, a young Muslim dude who is like interested in like city-run groceries, and he wants to freeze rent, and he's critical of Israel, and he's very interested like pro-Palestine. I'd have been like, this is a lie. Like, you're with me that candidate could win. And it happened. So
LB says, Connor, we have corporate socialism. How is that right? Socialism is not when the government does stuff, LB. We've been over this before. It's the decommodification of basic human needs and workers owning the means of production. Neither of those things is happening in America. Thank you.
So I do think that it's something to celebrate, but one, he has not won the general yet. Two, I didn't think he was going to win. I know what it's like. I'm afraid to love again, because I got excited for Bernie in 2016, then I got excited again in 2020. That didn't happen. And so I see these and I'm like, okay, I've seen it happen where a lot of online excitement or even just like news has been, generated around a candidate because they're very outspoken, they're polarizing, they have all these fresh ideas, they're a young face, they're charismatic, all of that. And it doesn't translate to success at the ballot box. But in this case, he didn't just like eke out a win. It was pretty much a landslide. So I do think that that's...
Which is because the normie corporate Dem candidate sucked.
Really awesome. He's got a big challenge ahead of him because Cuomo's running as an independent still. He's not dropping out. Eric Adams is...
That's going to split the vote. Eric Adams is running as an independent. That's going to split the vote.
Still going to be on the ballots. I like the Republican is like irrelevant because I don't think the Republican has any chance of winning. It's going to be between those three. And I couldn't even tell you right now who has a better chance of winning, whether it be Cuomo or Adams, because Cuomo's like low approval ratings and his all of his hiccups in his tenure. But yeah, like people need to not prematurely celebrate, but they also need to keep in mind that he was pitted against Andrew Cuomo, who is unpopular. He had to resign in disgrace. He was disavowed by his party. So that was one factor. And then another factor is that
he's uniquely like charismatic is one of those factors too.
He's uniquely charismatic, and he's in New York City. And I wouldn't say that like New York City has gone. They've had people like Mamdani now, and then they've had Giuliani and Bloomberg. So the city has had embraced different types of politics at different points.
Yeah.
But more often than not, they are Democrats. So yeah, we'll see. I'm excited. I think it's awesome. I think the disappointment to me and the valid criticism comes from the fact that I feel like the Democratic Party is very hesitant about him, and they don't see this win as something that's very, very exciting, which it is to me.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we should like start a running list of all the Democrats that have gone on the record to either support him or say that there's no, like Dean Phillips, that guy recently came out and said that there's no.
All right, I don't care about Mamdani that much. So I think the main thing that we should take away from this is that Aaron actually is interested in electoral politics, which is good. Again, I find it hypocritical that leftists will have such strong opinions on how politics should be run, how the government should be run, and yet they don't participate in the electoral and representative system to the detriment of their own goals, right? Like, you don't have to win all at once. Politics is not a battle that you win all at once. As a matter of fact, as soon as you win anything, you basically have to rally and get ready for the next battle, particularly in a liberal democracy. So yeah, the war of politics, actually, I think that's part of the reason why it's so interesting, is the conflict of politics is never over, right? Like, as soon as the Soviet Union fell, we still had to get ready for the breakup of the Russian satellite states and Russia itself, and what would Russia be in the wake of that. Winning over Nazi Germany just meant like the denazification of Europe, along with the rebuilding of the country. Victory over Imperial Japan, while great, we still had to rebuild Japan and then ultimately create a pretty like virile ally. So, you know, the truth is politics is never over. I think that's one of the things that makes it most compelling. Megastar says, Connor, did you see Lauren's follow-up? Pretty crazy stuff. I didn't. I did see that a part of her book was the fact that she was sexually assaulted by Andrew Tate. I believe that's part of it, which is interesting. LB says, reason being that it's interesting is because there's so many fucking pieces of shit in the far right. LB says, Connor, you have some nerve. Your salary for how every many years was paid with collected money. What the fuck are you talking about? That's not socialism, LB. For the 50th fucking time, you're wrong. I'm right. Okay? Socialism is not when the government does stuff. Otherwise, feudal empires would be like was ancient Egypt socialist? Obviously not, but they still collect taxes. Was ancient Mesopotamia socialist? Obviously not. They still collected taxes. What was it? Was medieval Europe or the frickin' the frickin' caliphates of Islam, were they socialist? No, obviously not. They didn't have the decommodification of basic human needs and workers owning the means of production. They didn't fucking have it. They weren't socialist. You keep using socialism in order to say that it's when the government does shit, but that's a very stupid way to analyze politics. It's very dumb. Stop. Like, I know that you like to piss me off, but it's a dumb analysis. It's incorrect. There's no way that you would ever say ancient Egypt, medieval Europe, feudal Japan. You would never say these places are socialist, and yet they had classes of people, including the security establishment, who were subsidized by taxes. Pretending that every law enforcement agent, every fire department agent, every soldier who's ever existed as a socialist project is dumb as fuck. And let me explain why it's dumb as fuck. Because the soldiers killed socialists. They made it their job to be like, oh, these people believe in the decommodification of basic human needs and workers owning the means of production, and they have a violent revolution that's killing tens of thousands of people. It's my job to take this rifle and to shoot those socialists and to hang their corpses in public. That way we can deter other socialists from trying to upset our power structure. So seriously, like this line of argumentation is pissing me the fuck off. Thanks. Justin says, good morning, Connor. Good morning, Justin. Good to see you. Sacred Snow says, sex pest / blatantly corrupt and leash to MAGA Dem DSA candidate. DSA candidate wins in a state with ranked choice. Socialist, the new Dem party is here. Absolute brain rot politics. Okay. If I understand what Sacred Snow is saying, he's saying that Mamdani didn't win because he was such a charming, charismatic, competent candidate. He won because everybody else was dumb and not a very good candidate. Understood. Possum Nation says, I oppose Erin on everything, but she is very respectable and she voted for Harris. She's not a revolution or bust type of lefty. Yes. I'm going to read a couple more and get back into it. General So says, Jesus, Lauren Southern. Yes. Lauren Southern's back. She wrote a book, and her book is effectively describing all of the terrible things that she went through while she was working with the dissident right, which includes a physical / probably sexual assault from Andrew Tate. Megastar says Lauren gave a couple of chapters for free, and it goes into how she was drunk with Tate and she wanted to sleep and he wanted more, and well, she didn't get into the details. Yep. All right. Anyways, Short Stack Goblin, good to see you. All right. We fast forwarded to the ContraPoints debate, so we skipped the Mamdani stuff because frankly, I don't care about New York that much. And then Bernie screwed out of the nomination? I don't care. And then Obama and the ACA. It could be an interesting policy decision of whether or not it's like hyper corporate healthcare that realistically should have been a Republican position. But hey, that's America, right? America is a fairly centrist country. All right, on to the ContraPoints debate.
All right, do you want to talk about?
Sorry, quick shell. Like the stream. It's free. I parasocially love all of you for being here. We started with a chat on Valor Media Network of around 10 people. We've been bouncing between 100 and 150. Depending on the content that we pick, it'll be between 80 and 150, which I parasocially love each and every one of you for being here. Like the stream, share it with your friends, engage in chat. There's lots of funny, interesting people who like to piss me off because it entertains them by making me angry. Then super chats if you got it. It is appreciated. Become a membership if you see the membership button, and watch the VODs and comment on the VODs. All right, continuing.
ContraPoints?
Yeah, let's talk about ContraPoints. Okay, so the way this conversation started.
Sorry, Dark King makes a very insightful point. Liberal democracy is great because instead of having a civil war every few decades, we have constant electoral fights that bleed almost all the energy for violence out. Yes.
Give me a second, I'm gonna show my chat. So ContraPoints had finally made a full statement on Israel-Palestine, and she posted it on Reddit. She didn't post it on Twitter or anything. They got put up on Twitter by somebody who transcribed it, and then I put, it's crazy that Ms. Rachel, a children's entertainer, has done a better job speaking up for Palestinians than many liberal and progressive political creators.
I'll be right back. I'm going to grab a refill of hot water. So sorry to chair react, but I need caffeine so desperately today.
And Hutch responds, what's your specific problem with her post? And you put, and I said, there are a few points ContraPoints makes that I agree on, which, and I've read the statement, I stand by that. But overall, it reads to me like a long-winded rationalization for an action that's framed as moral nuance. She acknowledges the ongoing genocide and has donated to Palestinian causes, which is more than many and commendable, but devotes more energy distancing herself from those participating in said genocide, or from those protesting said genocide, than from those supporting it, tacitly or otherwise. And then we agreed to this conversation. So I don't know, how'd you feel about my criticism? And you can give me your thoughts more broadly on what you thought of ContraPoints' statement.
I think the problem that I'm seeing in terms of the reactions, I think your premise about what Contra was saying is not accurate. Like, I think a lot of people read her statement and they interpreted it to mean that she was saying don't do any activism, but that wasn't what she was saying. She was explaining why her specific platform on YouTube, which is videos presented in a normally kind of whimsical, playful, satirical, comedic way, wasn't it that this topic wasn't a good fit for that particular platform. And she then went into great detail in a post that should take maybe 2-3 minutes to react or to read. So I didn't feel like it was super long-winded. I mean, this was a very quick read for me. But I think your framing is just all off. Like, she's not telling people don't do activism.
Do you think it's possible for somebody to, like, for people to kind of pick up on a connotation and that ends up being more specific than the literal denotation of what somebody says?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. So if you're saying that maybe she should have articulated herself better, then we can get into that. But like when I read her,
just because you said that, you know, people were straw manning her and saying that she's discouraging people from action. That's why I said, like, I think it rationalizes inaction, because is there anywhere in it where she says, do not do a thing, do not speak up for Palestinians, don't protest? No, those words never appear anywhere in it. But I think the framing, when it kicks off in framing that I don't know if I don't believe that she's intending to trivialize criticism, but I wasn't seeing, and I'm not ContraPoints, so, you know, I'll defer to her, that maybe she saw more people requesting that she make a video on it. I didn't see that. I saw people just making the request, like, why haven't you spoken out more about it since, or why don't you use any of your, like, multiple platforms to kind of speak up for Palestinians if that's how you feel?
Well, the opening
starts off from like.
So sorry for being gone. That actually is the one thing, now that I'm thinking about it, that Natalie could have done that would have silenced a substantive amount of criticism, is that she could have just fundraised. I don't know. I don't think she has. I think she's privately donated some of her money, which is good. But she could have asked anybody to do a fundraiser. She could have asked me to do a fundraiser. She could have asked Hassan, Destiny, Straighterade. She probably could have asked, what's that guy's name? Sean. Natalie has so much clout that anybody would like you could get a fascist to show up for a Palestinian relief fundraiser because she has so much clout. So that's the one thing that I actually think, like, you probably could and should criticize Natalie for. It's like, okay, you don't like the anti-Semitism, you don't like all the Jew hate, but in general, you do think what Israel is doing is messed up. So why don't you use your clout, money, and influence to raise hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars for relief for the Palestinian people? That seems like an easy, obvious W that would actually allay a happy amount of the criticism that you're receiving. Checking in with chat, though, because I love my chat. And by the way, VOD viewers, if you don't like that I don't talk, or that I talk to my chat, then buzz off. Okay. My chat gives me super chats. They give me memberships. I parasocially love them. They show up and engage in chat, so I have somebody to talk to while we're reviewing content. VOD viewers, I love you as well. And you should go ahead and comment on the video. That way we get increased engagement in the algorithm. However, let's be real. Your view is worth 16 cents, whereas some of these people will give me $10. So once you start doing super thanks on the channel to the tune of 10 or 20 or 50 bucks, then I'll start listening to the VOD viewers that I shouldn't engage with my chat. But let's be real, probably not. Scrolling, LB says that's precisely what it is. Why do multi-billion-dollar companies get government subsidies and don't pay taxes? We have private security. No, Connor, collecting taxes for the public good is a form of socialism. No, it's not. No, it's not. You're wrong. So let's go ahead and test the limits of this. When fascist organizations collect dues from their constituent members and then turn around and pay their thugs to run around and beat the shit out of people, is that socialism? Are you willing to claim that as a form of socialism? When the National Socialists collected taxes in order to subsidize the extermination of Jews and Gypsies and Roma, was that socialism? I mean, if you say yes, then I'll admit that you're consistent, but I still think this is a wildly stupid perspective. Wow, man says chair points. True. All right. Rob says socialist countries would have citizens, so citizenship is socialist. True. Nobody would accept arguments like that. Yes. Thank you. I'm happy I'm not the only person. Oh, that drives me crazy. All right. Starhawk says it's just the same totalitarian attitude and purity spiraling that creeps into all of leftist politics. True. Mega Zero says Ludwig did donated like 10K and was shit on for it. Yeah, but that's because Ludwig was like, I'm going to donate 10K and I don't care if you donate, but you should think about donating this stuff. Saying I don't care if you donate, that's where he went wrong. Anyways.
A criticism that I almost think is like a false premise, but then also like even if she literally never says don't do this activism, it's possible for it to have like a kind of like a depressing or like almost a demotivating thing, because I have to assume that, you know, Contra acts in a way like if ContraPoints feels that she herself needs to be very cautious in the type of protesting that she engages in surrounding this topic, then you're implicitly suggesting to people who agree with you, you should also, and even those who disagree with you, you should be more willing to you should be more cautious as well. And I think that's what people mean when they say it. That's certainly what I mean when I say it ends up justifying inaction.
So the very opening sentence of her post is, so many leftists feel betrayed because I haven't made a video on Palestine. So she's opening it by very clearly identifying this specific platform.
But I saw it on Twitter. Like, I saw people responding to her on Twitter. That's why I'm saying I didn't see people saying, why don't you make a video on it? I saw them saying, why don't you just use your platform to speak more? But she has multiple platforms because she has Twitter, she has Patreon, she has YouTube, she has like lots of different things at her disposal to reach out to people, right?
True. Actually, you know what? What's funny is I kind of agree with Aaron on this one. She has Natalie has a variety of platforms, and if she's been like utterly silent for the past 20 months, then I would view that as some kind of moral failing. Right? Reason being that, like, again, you don't have to say Hamas is good. I don't think, like, even the hardcore leftists, the one who want you to be unconditionally supportive of Palestine, I don't think that they're expecting most normies to endorse Hamas, the terrorist organization. Okay? So you could probably be a lefty and say, hey, listen, terrorism is bad, but we need to understand the material conditions that motivate people to engage in terrorism. There are lots of innocent Palestinians who are suffering. While I still disavow anti-Semitism and completely disavow the killing of civilians being perpetrated by the IDF, I'm not saying that anyone is particularly evil. I think this is all just messed up, and we need to alleviate as much human suffering as possible. I'm going to be doing a fundraising stream. I would love it if you showed up and donated. Boom, easy. And simultaneously makes no one happy and makes everybody happy, because you're keeping the thing that is most important central in your mind, which is the alleviation of human suffering. So actually, so far, I'm more with Aaron, which is surprising. Unork says, wait, when my local gang collects protection money, it isn't socialism. Well, now I'm second guessing their motives. Thank you, Unork. I needed that.
Okay.
Like I don't know where people, you know, personally, I would enjoy seeing her pour milk on a mannequin of Bibi Netanyahu. That's just me. But I
mean, same, but
that, like,
yeah.
people were expecting like a bathtub video or any of that.
Well, she's addressing that particular criticism. So like the point of this post is not to get into the complexities of Israel Palestine or unpack the conflict or set up the dynamic in any, like the point of her post very explicitly, as it's laid out in the very first sentence, is addressing a particular criticism that I.
JL says you don't always read the super chats, but you do thank us. No, brother, I do always read the super chats. I'm just behind on chat because I actually engage with my chat, unlike every other streamer who just ignores everyone. Like, listen, there's gonna come a reckoning. Okay, there's gonna come a reckoning where I am gonna have to eventually figure out how to do chat. And I like the current balance. Sorry, I need to address my chat real quick. I need to figure out the balance. I like what we're doing right now, okay? What we're doing right now, which I think is a viable chat interaction strategy, is I'm watching the content, I'm listening to the content, I'm going to pause every 5 minutes in order to talk about it. While I'm listening to the content, I'm scrolling through chat and I'm reading all the chats. You guys are oftentimes arguing amongst each other, and I don't need to address everything that's being said in chat, even when there's a good point made. I'm actually clicking on all of your guys' chats. You might not be looking at the screen, but I'm clicking on each chat and highlighting it, kind of letting you know that I see it, right? And sometimes I might laugh or something like that. But if there's something in particular that I want to address, I stop, I leave it on that chat, I wait for a break in the content, and then I address it. So yeah, that puts me 20 minutes late, 30 minutes late, sometimes even like 45 minutes to an hour late on the chat, but I actually still engage with my audience. So there are plenty of people who super chat, and I parasocially love you and thank you for the money. There are plenty of people who can't afford it. They're working class schlubs. They're students. They're people who are barely paying their bills. So if they can't afford, if $10 means the difference between you getting a grocery item and donating to me, I would prefer it if you got the grocery item for yourself, so you had a succulent Chinese meal. You know what I'm saying? If the money makes that big of a difference, I want you to keep the money. If, however, you have a little bit of extra scratch, I want you to donate, right? Because this stream doesn't fucking operate off of, hopes, dreams, and rainbow farts and unicorn dust. You know what I'm saying? So anyways, I love my chat. So I'm late, but I read. Dr. Zaya says, if Contra did some fundraiser, it probably would make a big difference. It's not about making a big difference. None of us can make a big difference, Dr. Zayas. Literally, the entire planet of Earth could be killed in nuclear holocaust, and it wouldn't matter to the cosmos at large. Of course, we could all give in to cosmic nihilism. However, we shouldn't. We should care. I should care about you. You should care a little bit about me. We should try to make the world a better place. And I would give you the starfish parable, but I don't want to bore chat to death. So for the sake of content, we're going to let it continue to flow.
Suspect she sees in her Reddit posts or on her Twitter, in her Twitter replies. And so she's responding to those specific people. And I think other people, maybe who this didn't even apply to, misinterpreted her post altogether to mean or to suggest that she was telling them to not do any activism. But there's nothing even remotely hinting that in her post. Like nothing, literally not a single thing. What she was drawing an issue with was a particular kind of activism that mandated anti-Zionism as a part of a necessary component of Palestinian advocacy. So like,
ooh, this is why I like Hutch as well. Again, Hutch has pissed me off twice. And it's not personal, it's just political. We talked about guns once. He ignored everything I said and went back to tweeting exactly what he was tweeting before, which to me is like liberal gun control fucking nonsense. Okay. So that was one thing that annoyed me. But, you know, Hutch is still a nice guy, right? Then the other thing that pissed me off was we were talking about politics in general, and he's like, I think you're a progressive. And I'm like, progressivism and conservatism has nothing to do with policy prescriptions. It has to do with a philosophy of how you approach policy or how you approach politics. And he's like, yeah, but like, you're nice to trans people and you're nice to black people and you're nice to Hispanics. I think that's pretty progressive. And I'm like, no. And so that pissed me off too. But anyways, this is a decent insight from Hutch that effectively there's nothing wrong with what Contra did. Contra called out the most toxic elements of the far left, which is effectively saying that if you're not dedicated to the dismantling of the Israeli state, then you're not actually doing anything, which is the dumbest political advocacy that you could possibly have in reference to the Gazan conflict.
I watched a Vanguard video yesterday where they were discussing the ContraPoints posts, and they said, for example, you cannot be an advocate for Palestinians if you don't believe in a one-state solution. So she's
yeah, you can. 100% you can. And that's Vanguard far left cringe. And it actually, I'm just going to be real, it makes me uncomfortable that Josiah runs Live and Learn. Thank you. Thank you, baby. I love you. It makes me concerned that Live and Learn, when I went on it, was effectively a liberal and progressive hug box. It seems like Econoboy and Pisco have infiltrated and are further left than they're hinting on. I think this is like the frog in boiling water scenario where Pondering Politics and Hutch are normie libs who are getting boiled in the water of far left ideology. And then the fact that the Vanguard boys can come on the show and just bully the fuck out of Hutch for having a perfectly sane perspective. This actually kind of tells me that Live and Learn is probably, you know, bear in mind, I don't engage with all the content, I just see the clips, but Live and Learn is probably suffering from the same thing that all left-wing politics suffer from, which is liberals want to be nice to everybody, so they're not willing to be mean to people who need to get the shit bullied out of them.
Speaking to this exact kind of insistence or mandate, and I think her observations were just like self-evidently correct. So like by doing that,
True.
By saying that if you want to be a part of our coalition, if you want to be a part of our activist movement, you need to advocate for basically to dissolve the current government structure of Israel and replace it with a single state full right of return, which she goes into detail about why that's completely infeasible. So I just don't.
I think it's unfeasible, but correct, Hutch. True. Base Hutch. I'm
just not seeing that same issue that you're seeing in the context of everything she wrote. I did not get her at all saying don't do activism.
Right. I think Natalie's statement could have been improved by saying like, you know, God bless the activists and the protesters who are actually trying to do something positive. I think she could have done better. It's true.
Say that the current strategies that have been employed now have meant that 0 Palestinian lives have been saved, not one fewer bomb or bullets was like deployed, and it also may have slightly contributed to the re-election of Trump, guaranteeing that the U.S. will put no diplomatic pressure on Netanyahu for at least 4 years, making protests against Israel both more riskier and less effective.
That's right.
What she is calling people to do is reflect on the types of tactics and strategies and protests that they have engaged in since, and saying like maybe it was completely ineffective. So I do think that it's
no. I wouldn't say it was ineffective, meaning that it had no effect. I would say it was counterproductive, meaning that the intended effect that you wanted to have, you had the opposite effect because your optics were so dog shit. Trying to get liberals and normie Americans to endorse terrorist organizations is fucking insane.
It's not just a critique that she's saying like, oh, be open to considering this. I thought she was pretty much suggesting that like the things that have been done now, not only was it like not helpful, it may have actually hurt. So how is that not
true? Unironically true. Leftist advocacy to support terrorist organizations and sweep for terrorist organizations probably reduced support for the Palestinian cause. 100%.
Her saying that like maybe you shouldn't protest in this specific way, right?
Well,
no. Protests are fine, but actually, yeah. You shouldn't protest in this specific way. Yeah, death to the IDF being chanted by massive crowds of people at the encouragement of pop bands and all that kind of bullshit. 100%. There are less people who are supportive of the Palestinian cause because they saw that. Saying from the river to the sea, and then when somebody asks you to explain it, you're like, yes, we need to dissolve the Israeli state. Less people supported your movement as a result of that. 100%.
No, but that's different though.
Feel that like that's not the way to do it.
No, but that's different though. If she's saying don't.
Correct. That's not the way to do it. You're right.
If she's saying the protesting in this specific way was worse than
was borderline worse than nothing.
Productive, it was counterproductive. She's talking about a specific critique. She's not saying broadly don't do any kind of activism or
Hutch is correct.
Contribute money to direct aid organizations or charities that benefit Palestinians. She's not saying to engage in activism. She's talking about a very specific critique, right?
I guess having a criticism like this and not following it up with like, here's what you ought to do instead, or kind of like, it's like, I would never like tell someone and not show them, you know.
Ooh, everybody is so based in this conversation. Too bad they're a fucking liberal and a communist.
No, like if I had a criticism of somebody and I'd be like, you should not do this, I would also follow it up with, this is how you should do it instead, because this is a way that you can get people on board with your movement. This is a better alternative to what you're currently doing. I personally wouldn't leave them with just like, here's the criticism, do with it what you will. You know, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm just going to tell you what not to do. It's always
I love this. This is actually great.
Going to lead people to make uncharitable assumptions because it's like, you don't like what I'm doing. You don't provide an alternative. So I'm just going to assume what you've said has been the reaction. So that's one part of it. But then another part of it is like, well, give me your thoughts on that. Like, do you think my assessment of that is like off base?
No, I think they're 100% correct. I think that Hutch is saying that it's a valid criticism to say that your protesting is actually counterproductive. I think Aaron's assessment that, okay, you're saying that our protesting is counterproductive, but you didn't propose an alternative solution. What's your alternative solution? Otherwise, I just think you're a stick in the mud that's actually detracting from the movement in general. These are both perfectly valid assessments. I like both of these. Somebody was saying that Aaron was going to be stupid in this conversation. Maybe we'll get to that later, but so far, I'm okay with it. Sacred Snow says, we're running into the same problem with socialism as we did with fascism. The online left called everything fascist forever, and now when it's actually coming about, we can't call it out. That's why I like having a very specific definition of fascism, by the way. Sacred Snow says, the Republicans called everything socialism communism, so now when the government does stuff, it's socialism, and it doesn't matter whether or not that stuff is good or bad. Yeah, so consciously or unconsciously, the reason why I will never concede to LB's perspective that socialism is when the government does stuff is because I view this as a double-edged sword that cuts in zero directions that I want them to cut it to. Libertarians want to call socialism government action socialism because they know that there's a Cold War antipathy from Americans that is fading out, by the way, towards socialism. And so they use that as an emotional pull to try to cut government services. So the libertarian / anarcho-capitalist instinct to label everything socialism, wildly counterproductive and stupid, and it's going to start failing in the next generation. Then I think that leftists and socialists want to call all government action socialism because most people don't hate firefighters. Most people are neutral on cops. Most people are neutral or positive on healthcare. Most people are neutral or positive on teachers. And so as a result, if you label that all socialism, well, then isn't socialism good? Isn't people working for the common good good? And therefore we should have more of it? And that's where I will accept neither line because I feel like it's political obfuscation and gamesmanship that is not beneficial to society. Thank you for pointing that out, Sacred Snow. I appreciate it.
I guess.
Let me think about that for a second. Well, there's like a couple things here. Like, I don't think she needs to necessarily go into detail about like what a particular kind of activism should look like, because I think that's really broad. I think like you can do all kinds of activism. That
Slater says, first good Israeli Palestine take I've seen from Connor. What was the bad takes? What the fuck are you talking about?
doesn't revolve around demanding a one-state solution. But I think an equally important part of her post was setting up the reality that, and this is just going to be something that makes people upset. I understand it, but she's telling the truth when she says that it was politically infeasible to expect that there was a lane or a path or any kind of mechanism to pressure government to stop sending them arms. She's saying that that was impossible.
General So says, do you post these videos anywhere? Yes. Counterpoints Politics. Type it into your search bar. You should see my Counterpoints 40K channel, which is at 111,000 subscribers based. But you should also see Counterpoints, which should be labeled, it should be around like 7,000 subs. It's all the VODs get posted there. We're on like a week lag because the editor has to chop them all up or whatever, but the VODs will be posted there.
I know that people might hear that and they're going to get very upset. I understand why that anger. Nobody wants to see.
Short Stack Goblin says, Connor, stop pausing to explain why you pause. I'm going to pause more.
Violence like this unfold daily with hundreds of videos every day of just like unspeakable violence. And nobody wants to be confronted with that and be told there's really not much that you can do to stop that right now. But she was telling the truth. When she says it was politically infeasible, the Republic, I mean, like, let's just grant that it was possible to convince Democrats to go along with this. Let's say we can convince Joe Biden to not be a principled Zionist and not be someone who is looking to continue our decades-long diplomatic alliance with this country. And let's say he was open to discontinuing arms sales and aid packages to Israel. You know who else you have to go through in that spot are Republicans. Like the Republicans held the House at that point in 2023. There was Mike Johnson was the speaker shortly after October 7th kicked off. And so if you wanted to set as a goal, like pressuring the government to stop sending them arms, like what you're saying is the job would have been to convince Mike Johnson to do this. This is just an obvious non-starter. Like that just was never, ever, ever going to happen.
Now I'm going to pause even more. Short Stack Goblin says, can we get 1.25? Hutch is a slow talker and Aaron, well, Hutch is a slow talker. No. You and Justin, listen, I love Justin. Seriously, thank you for all the donations. Thank you for being a groiper and still hanging out in our chat filled with a bunch of fucking liberals and progressives and shit and tolerating their fucking opinions that are antithetical to your own. Stop asking for 2 times or 1.5 times or 1.25 times. There's plenty of people. If you want to watch it as a VOD and throw it on 1.25 or 1.5, you do that. Okay? No, there are plenty of people who are here to listen and they want to understand the words being said. So no, I'm not speeding content up unless it's actually someone who has like a speech delay, developmental disability where they say one word every 5 seconds. I'll put that person on 2x, but nobody else is getting put on 2x. I'm just sharing that, so stop asking. What was somebody else made an interesting point. It was basically like, oh, the starfish parable. Yeah, I'll share it real quick. So the starfish parable is actually like a cornerstone of the way that I operate with the world. Keeping it as brief as possible. 1,000 starfish wash up onto the beach, and a kid, they're all drying out in the sun and they're dying very quickly. A kid is running around, picking up the starfish and hurling them back into the sea. And then an old man walks by and he says, son, you're wasting your time. There's thousands of them. There's no way that you'll have that big of an impact. You might as well just give up. And the kid, undeterred, says, well, it mattered to that one. And then he picks up another one and undeterred throws it back into the ocean. And so the whole point is that our problems are so large and our problems are so out of control because we inherently live in a chaotic universe that oftentimes we can give into the nihilism of our plane of existence. But the truth is, it's bad for your soul and it's bad for the world if you stop trying. And just because we as a 100-viewer YouTube chat that hopefully eventually becomes a 1,000-viewer YouTube chat, just because we will have an infinitesimally small effect on the world doesn't mean we don't try to have an effect at all. And the same way that an avalanche is made up of many snowflakes, we should endeavor to be a snowflake that pushes in the right direction. Okay? So if you're here, I don't want to see that nihilist bullshit in my chat. I don't want to see, oh, Connor, it doesn't matter. Oh, Connor, you might have saved 2 Palestinian children, but realistically, tens of thousands of other ones died. Guess what? It mattered to those 2 Palestinian children that the world gave a shit enough to give them enough food and medicine to survive an ongoing war. Okay? It matters. It matters to them. It matters to the world.
And so there's a couple things here. Like she's right. It was kind of hopeless, and it is kind of hopeless right now. And she's right that doing one state solution only type thing necessarily excludes like 95% of the country.
I think that I guess my issue with it is that she kind of treats U.S. complicity as like this unchangeable fact. I hear you kind of, I guess, feel this way, but that is that's a choice that's being made, right? These are all policy choices and decisions. And I'm not saying that reversing them is something that could happen overnight or easily, but I don't know. She seems just like resigned that like to the inevitability of the like U.S. material support to Israel into perpetuity, or into the very least like several years from now.
I don't think she's saying that though.
Like, accept like the Israeli brutality. Like you can't really change these circumstances, even though we were seeing shifts in public opinion, and Biden was obviously posturing towards pandering to that because he started changing his rhetoric to like, I'm working day and night for a ceasefire, even when his actions didn't always entirely align with that stated goal.
Well, they did help negotiate multiple ceasefires.
Messaging because he could see that the Democratic base was not as gung-ho about just kind of uncritically backing Israel as maybe they had, but they had been in previous like conflicts between Israel and Gaza and Palestine or whatever. I don't know. Like I don't see that to me as like, oh, she's just being realistic. I feel like she's being fatalistic, and she kind of dresses it up as like, this is me being pragmatic. But to me, it's like, I don't think that what does Congress have to do with the United States vetoing Security Council resolutions at the UN? Last time I checked, Joe Biden doesn't need to get every statement that he makes approved by Congress. He can make statements condemning Israel. He can make statements.
But he won't, because he knows where the electorate is.
Expressing opposition or distaste or displeasure at what he's doing.
No, the Biden administration and Biden himself were partly culpable. I'm not suggesting that they weren't. But the UN votes are largely symbolic that don't really amount to anything. So that wouldn't have changed anything. But like,
we're a permanent member.
Well,
UN.
So I think like a lot of these are just like measures condemning Israel, right? Like, what does that actually amount to?
The Security Council resolutions are more than just like performative or whatever. So there's 2 different types of resolutions that can be passed, but the Security Council ones are actually serious, and they do have like weight behind them. And when
what weight? This is what Hutch is asking. So if the Security Council condemns a UN member saying, hey, you're doing bad stuff, what does that mean? Does that mean that they get sanctions? Does that mean that they intervene militarily? What does that actually mean?
United States back something, that's not just like a virtue signal. Like I can understand if it's like,
okay, I take your point. I take your point on that. But like,
I don't. What do you mean? Anyways, Slater says Connor takes on IP are so bad. IDF isn't a terror org because they're a state. Lol. Okay. This is the dumbest fucking point you could have made, Slater. This is the dumbest fucking point you could have made. What is it? So terrorism definition. The unlawful use of violence and intimidation, especially against civilians in the pursuit of political aims. So is every political organization terrorist now? Because clearly, like every state uses violence and intimidation, especially against civilians in the pursuit of political aims. You could say law enforcement uses violence and intimidation against civilians in the pursuit of political aims. Do you know what cops do? They bully people into being normal. So when I arrest somebody for a DUI, I am using violence and intimidation. I'm putting them in handcuffs, and I'm also threatening them that if they don't go into handcuffs, I'm going to beat the shit out of them. I'm targeting civilians, and I'm in the pursuit of political aims, which is effectively don't be a drunk driver in the United States of America. So I obviously fulfill as an agent of the state in law enforcement, I fulfill 3/4 of this thing, right? The key operative word here is unlawful. Unlawful. Okay? And there's lawful rules of warfare, and there's unlawful rules of warfare, but we wouldn't declare states terrorist just because they engage in warfare. And two generations ago, we wouldn't even say the Soviet Union was a terrorist state, despite the fact that they probably committed all of the same crimes as Germany. We wouldn't say that you could say the Nazi state was terrorist, because I'm pretty sure even that back then genocide was no, I think they invented the term genocide because they didn't even have it up until the early 20th century. So again, like you said, Connor's takes are so bad, and then you pick the dumbest point possible. So congratulations on being a dumbass in my chat. Megastar for $10 does smiley face, open mouth. Thank you, Megastar. Thank you for your super chats. So far, thank you to Melody, JL, and Megastar for donating to the chat. Seriously, thank you. It's very much appreciated.
I want to unpack what you said, though.
Whatever. It's like, it's true about Congress, but it ignores that there are other mechanisms that the United States has to put pressure on Israel that absolutely could have been used.
But before we even get to that, though, she actually didn't say that it would be impossible to change the sort of congressional makeup. She didn't say that it was impossible to change the congressional makeup to one that has way more people that are willing to vote for something like an arms embargo. What she said was that something like that would necessarily take years, and she's correct about that. Like, the UN can do this or that resolution, and Biden can pause shipments in accordance with law, but he did not have the unilateral authority to halt shipments altogether. That would have had to have come from a bill from Congress. And so, I think it's counterintuitive, and it works against people's sense of, like, I think especially when you're young, when you're young and you're getting involved in politics, you take a look at historical examples of successful civil rights movements or liberation movements, revolutionary struggles, and you want to think that at any given point, you can accomplish anything with your activist movement. You can change any kind of situation so long as you just have the sufficient energy and willpower and passion to do it. But at some point, if you want to say that she's incorrect about what she's saying, you're going to have to make the case to me to how you could have convinced Mike Johnson to stop sending aid to Israel. And
the answer is you won't be able to. The best thing you can do is get normie Democrats back into office, and then have normie Democrats not explicitly endorse Israel ethnic cleansing in Gaza, which, by the way, hasn't happened yet. But obviously they've talked about it.
That touches on another thing that she touched on, which is that when the leftist Palestinian activists were talking about this issue in 2024, they were only talking about the Democrats and their complicity in what was going on. They did not talk about, like, the vital role that Congress plays. They did not talk about the vital role that the Republicans in the House played in passing this aid package. All of the criticism with respect to Israel and Gaza was focused and centered on Biden and Kamala.
But why? Why do you think?
The answer to that question for me is that I think that they were completely misguided. I think they made a mistake.
Wait, the activists by pressuring the Joe Biden's administration?
Yeah, I don't think that they were. I don't think that they.
Possum Nation says, as a father of 10, I think you use the F word a little bit too much. That's probably true. I'll try to reel it in. Sometimes my mother watches my programming, so I should stop using the F-bomb so much. I'm not a father of 10, but that was to get your attention. That was a good strategy, Possum Nation. I'm not going to lie.
They were properly. I don't think that they. I think their motivation was to, like, shift the party platform that Kamala was running on. So they wanted specifically they wanted her to run on, like, an arms embargo or something like that. So they had political goals.
Yeah, which was not going to happen.
But in doing so, and she sets up the stage here. So, like, she sets up the sort of intractable nature of what was happening at the time, and then she sets up their, like, specific methods, like demanding a one-state solution. And then when you have a situation where, like, hundreds of videos of unspeakable violence are showing up on your feed every day, and all these activist groups are talking about is the Democrats' complicity in it, they don't it sets up a situation where a lot of these people don't properly, number one, acknowledge the Republicans' role in what was happening in Gaza, and number two, it's shifting them away from the emphasis on how bad Trump is going to be. That was what she was sort of, like, speaking to in that post.
Well, because
Bud123 says Israel claims they don't have to follow the Rome Statute of the Geneva Convention, which bans using starvation as a method of warfare for its war in Gaza. Yeah, sure. So, but if it's not a signatory, then I don't think it would have to comply. And even if it does, if it chooses not to comply, there's plenty of signatories to the Geneva Conventions that don't comply with the Geneva Convention because there's no enforcement arm of the Geneva Convention. It's supposed to be like the ICJ and the UN, but the UN is fucking toothless because they don't have an army. Let's take and even if they had an army, let's face it, it would be the United States again. Let's look at, did the US sign the Geneva Convention? Yes, the United States has signed and ratified the 4 Geneva Conventions of 1949. They have also signed but not ratified Protocols 1 and 2 of 1977. Additionally, the U.S. ratified Protocol 3 in 2007. The Geneva Conventions are a series of treaties that establish international standards for humanitarian treatment during armed conflict. The 4 conventions are amelioration of the condition of the wounded and sick in armed forces, amelioration of the condition of wounded, sick, and shipwrecked members of armed forces at sea, treatment of prisoners of war, protection of civilians in times of war. So I'd be curious which one of these they have all we've signed but not ratified. Or later ones we signed but didn't ratify. Did Israel sign the Geneva Convention? Yes, Israel is a signatory to the Geneva Conventions. All 4 of the 1949 conventions were ratified by Israel in 1951. However, Israel's signing and ratification were not without reservations. Upon signing, Israel declared that while it would abide by the provisions of the treatment of prisoners of war without reservations, its adherence to the other 3 conventions should be subject to the reservation that it would use the red shield of David as the distinctive emblem for its medical services. Okay. Yeah. I haven't heard this line of argumentation, Bud123. I would actually be curious. I'm actually curious what your source is on this. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I need to research it further. That's interesting. That's interesting that we've signed and ratified the 1940s Geneva suggestions, but we didn't ratify later ones. And then it's interesting to me that Israel appears to have signed and ratified, but then is ignoring some of them. But then the question is, what's the enforcement mechanism? Because power abhors a vacuum. That's something that if you watch the stream, you need to understand that. Power abhors a vacuum. If you have laws, but you don't have an enforcement mechanism, those laws are worth as much as the paper they're written on. Boog says, that's the nirvana fallacy. I always find the balance between that and feed a man a fish. He eats for a day, teach a man to fish, and he eats for a lifetime interesting. Yep. Idols should have impact on our societies whenever we can, as our material circumstances and work schedules and family obligations and community obligations allow. But I think that in order to have the maximal positive effect on society, we need to be communitarian, not collectivist, communitarian. All right. Yeah, let's go.
Trump's not the president yet.
Well, he was a candidate for but he was a candidate for president, right? So like if
I'm a voter for the Democratic Party, I'm going to spend more time attempting to leverage my vote within that party than I would attempting to leverage it like with a Republican base politician group or whatever, because I can't even say to that person, yeah, I'm part of your coalition or I'm a constituent of yours, that's why you should listen to me. It's like with the Democrats, these people are Democratic voters, or they could potentially be Democratic voters, and in some cases, again, they supported him or whatever. So, and they're given that it's Biden's administration.
Oh my God, whatever 4690 says nothing to say on the Epstein stuff, and he's asked twice. Yeah, I have plenty to say on the Epstein stuff. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure 80% of my Twitter is spamming memes at MAGA in reference to Epstein. Trump is sweeping. Trump is sweeping for the pedophiles. That's what I have to say about it. MAGA is a bunch of fucking idiots. They literally voted. Trump was like, oh yeah, I'm going to blow it wide open. I'm going to uncover all the pedophiles and we're going to all arrest them. He was fucking boys with the guy who ran the pedophile ring for like a decade. In the 80s and 90s, Trump was accused of banging underage prostitutes. Now you're shocked that he's sweeping? You're shocked? Now, the only criticism that I have for the Democrats is that they sat on it for 4 years. But guess what? My opinion on Epstein is that Bill Gates is implicated because his wife says he's implicated. Bill Clinton is implicated because he was spotted on the island a dozen times in the company of young women, not his wife. So Bill Clinton is implicated. And then Kevin Spacey and Chris Tucker, I think, are also implicated. But weirdly enough, I haven't heard any hard evidence about them. I've only heard that some victims claim that they were on the island and engaged in orgies and all that shit. And then I think Donald Trump is probably implicated. Now, Donald Trump, to my knowledge, probably is not implicated at Lolita Island itself, but he did party at the penthouse with Jeffrey Epstein in New York during the 1980s. And there was a 12 or 13-year-old prostitute who accused Donald Trump of raping her at one of the parties. So, yeah, let's be specific. Our country is currently in the hands of people who are ephebophilic predators who had sex with post-pubescent but pre-age of consent teenage prostitutes because they wanted to flex how powerful they were before the age of the internet and the age of information. It's probably been that way forever, by the way. Like there have probably been blackmail sex games forever, but we effectively know, in my opinion, we're at like 60 to 70% knowing that Jeffrey Epstein was running a blackmail powerful people operation where he would party and finance other rich and powerful people, invite them to hang out with him. They would party, they would have sex with underage prostitutes, and then he would use that as blackmail in order to gain leverage over rich and powerful people. Also, I'm pretty sure Jeffrey Epstein partied with Leonardo DiCaprio and a bunch of A-list celebrities in the 1990s. Jeffrey Epstein, Leonardo DiCaprio, and I think Cameron Diaz, Bruce Willis. Yeah, like all these people were partying with Jeffrey Epstein. So why do you think that Leonardo DiCaprio keeps dating 18 to 25-year-olds? It's probably because when he was 15 or 16, he was recruited by these fucking degenerate fucks in order to have like bisexual orgies with Jeffrey Epstein. And so he never lost his taste for young flesh. Okay? So let's be real. Yes, the world's run by ephebophilic predators. That's what I have to say about it. Cameron Mosley says, what's your opinion on Razor Fist? He's too confidently wrong all of the time. There we go. Back to it.
It makes sense to me that is where the effort is currently.
But the role of the Congress is the role of the Congress.
No, Israel didn't sign the NPT.
And appropriating these funds is just as crucial as Biden's role in like dispersing those funds. Like it's a co-equal branch of government. They like the Congress are the ones that determine what amount of aid gets sent, what amount of like money gets sent. Like they have just as big of a role to play in this situation as Biden did.
Patsimo says, weird now that the Dems are out of power, they want the files released. No, it's not. It's not at all. It's mutually assured destruction. If you release the files, then you're probably going to destroy the Clinton legacy. You're going to destroy Bill Gates, and you're going to destroy Donald Trump. So you're going to destroy a powerful right-wing dynasty. You're going to destroy a powerful left-wing dynasty, and you're going to destroy one of the largest private billionaires on the planet. You're going to destroy 3 very large economic and political dynasties. And so Democrats who are not co-opted by Jeffrey Epstein are daring Donald Trump to release the files because they know that they swept for Bill Clinton, but nobody really called them out on it during their term in power. But if Donald Trump releases the files, he's destroying his own legacy. So Donald Trump's options are one of two things. He sweeps for it, at which point his legacy is partially destroyed, or he releases it, at which point his legacy is guaranteed destroyed, which is why he's sweeping for it.
So like, let me just like say, like, imagine someone who's like 18, 19, 20 years old, and they're just getting interested in politics, and
Listen, guys, I get it. This is boring and you don't want to listen to the content. We'll wrap it up in the next 20 minutes and we'll move on to the next fucking content. But you guys keep asking about shit that's unrelated.
entire media diet is like, you know, Hassan and Vanguard and a lot of people that were sort of like Mike from PA or whatever, like people who are like singularly focused on the Democrats' complicity and what's going on in Gaza. And then from that media diet, all this person is exposed to is Democratic complicity, Democratic complicity, Democratic complicity. No, there's no mention of Mike Johnson. There's no mention of how much worse Donald Trump is going to be. Can you imagine that like a lot of people in that spot probably felt apathetic and felt like they didn't have a meaningful choice, even though Donald Trump has been like literally 100 times worse?
True.
Yes, but I think that's rational because I don't think that you can just let the administration that's currently in charge off the hook from holding them accountable, because there's always going to be the future evil of Republicans. That always has to be factored in, and that's something that should be mentioned. If I could make recommendations to those creators, it's like when talking about this, it would be irresponsible to leave that out because he's a serious contender for the president in just a few months. So don't leave it out of the discussion. But I also don't think that it should undermine or make people's criticisms be any less intense, you know, and the pressure that they decide to put on it. Because I guess, like, is there any issue that you agree on Republicans with? Any single one?
Guns. Conservatism says Donald Trump will release the files, at least the real ones. Got to filter out all the fake stuff. First, Comey, Obama, and the Biden wrote a lot of fake stuff. Conservatism, please tell me you're fucking joking. Please tell me you're fucking joking. Please tell me that you don't trust Donald Trump to filter out the fucking Obama fake files. What the fuck, man? Please tell me that's a sarcastic statement. Beef Supreme says, ha ha ha, you can't destroy the Clinton legacy. Yeah, I mean, I guess he's been a sex fiend forever, right? So I guess banging underage prostitutes is probably right in line with Bill Clinton's character. That's probably true. Vastly Blank says, do you have any thoughts on why conservatives resist evidence-based community recovery programs for criminals while also claiming the mantle of community, family values, and politics? Yeah, it costs money. They don't want to spend money. All right, anyways, I'm caught up with chat, which means that it's time to shill. Like the stream, it's free. Watch the VODs, they're free. Comment on the VODs, it's free. So if you're a broke boy / you don't want to do super chats / memberships, then those are easy ways that you can support the stream. Then what I would say is if you got money burning a hole in your pocket and you want to support the stream, please do a super chat. It's greatly appreciated. Please become a member if you see the membership button. I think Megastar asked like, hey, I can't see the donation thing on mobile. We'll work on it. There's some technical stuff on the back end, as always. We got demonetized for a bit and then we got remonetized. So, you know, it's a headache, but we'll work on it. So he's joking. Calm down. Okay, thank you. Well, I didn't see conservative liberalism say that he was joking, so I haven't seen conservative liberalism respond yet. So I'm scared. I am the hose, and conservative liberalism has scared me. Okay. So anyways, I need to use the restroom. I made a little clown face. Okay. All right. Thank God. Conservative liberalism, you just scared the shit out of me. I am the hoe, and you scared the fuck out of me. So anyways, you skipped his response. Well, my apologies. I desperately need to use the restroom. I'm going to go do that. I'll be right back. I'm going to chair react again. I'm sorry. And chair, enjoy the chair. He's going to do an excellent react thing. We'll probably watch this for another few minutes. My summary so far is that I appreciate that Aaron is actually being, in my opinion, quite nuanced and smart. And I actually think these people are, there isn't a contradiction here. Hutch can say that Natalie wasn't trying to browbeat protesters out of their actions. Aaron can say that that has the effect because she didn't explicitly endorse protesting. Hutch can say, well, Natalie obviously said that this style of protesting, this goal is counterproductive. And then Aaron can say, oh, well, the situation is so extreme that you're going to have to forgive people for kind of being extreme. And also, you should still push in this general direction anyways. I think these are not necessarily contradictory perspectives. I think they're both describing reality. Yeah, Aaron being a communist sucks. I'm probably going to DM her and ask her to talk about that. So Melody says Cotter skipped over me criticizing religion. What BS, lol. Well, type it again. I'll be right back. Don't type it while I'm chair reacting. Type it when I get back. I'll be right back.
Nothing comes to mind.
Guns, gun rights or something.
Well, I don't think that gun.
Or or like anti-choice or something.
No, literally not a single thing. I cannot think of a single thing.
I struggle to think of something as well, but let's say that I agree with Democrats on absolutely everything except the one thing is like the Second Amendment, right? And in the context of some like school shooting or something like that, there's a really big ongoing public conversation and national debate about what direction we're going to take gun reform laws in, right? And you've got like Democrats in charge or like you have Republicans in charge or something like that. And people don't like it or like don't like the policy that they're going for. But then people from their party say like, but you should just be criticizing the Democrats because think about the future. I know you don't like what Republicans are proposing, but think about like the future evil that a Democratic administration could bring in if they were in charge right now during this crisis. And it's more important for you to think about that future harm instead of put pressure and act now with urgency at the current administration that's at the helm of all of this and the party that is the one that's like dictating the policy. It just seems irrational to me.
I don't think it's irrational to point out the co-equal branches of government, though. I don't think it's irrational to point out that this is
irrational to point it out, but to say that there ought to be more emphasis on like things that like future potential harms or whatever that have not yet materialized, but there's a chance to because Trump hadn't become the president yet, and shift that away from people holding current elected leaders accountable. Wait,
why is that irrational though? Like if I went to voters, if I had a crystal ball and I could see into the future, would it be irrational for me to go to, someone who is maybe thinking about not voting because they're pissed at Democrats about Gaza? Would it be irrational for me to tell them like, hey, if Trump wins, 14 million people around the world are going to die from USAID cuts. So I understand that Gaza is really important, but this is a holistic election that has thousands of effects. And I think that you should consider that. Would that be irrational for me to do that?
100% not. Go off, Hutch. This was my line of argumentation leading up to the election that effectively I knew Trump would be so bad in reference to Ukraine and international affairs that it didn't. Gaza, of course, matters, but Trump wasn't going to be better on Gaza. And there was so much more at stake that the lesser of two evils mattered.
No. And I made that pitch to people, but like I guess I wouldn't do it in that way though, because I did hear you bring this up, and I think that this is like, okay, then I'll do this hypothetical then, because this is a better one. You support Democrats on everything except let's pretend that that the Democrats are the ones that always want to cut USAID, right?
Beef Supreme, I love you, but fuck you. He says office chair, the smartest cop to ever live. You son of a bitch.
And you're going to vote for them in spite of that, and we have the same figures, okay? Those researchers from the Lancet are also saying that if the Democrats cut USAID like they say they want to, then 14 million people die by 2030.
Republicans, but sure.
Just a few years or whatever. And somebody says to you, like, I know you support Democrats or whatever, but think of those 14 million people. What would you say to them?
I would think about like the 14 million people.
You ought to. Would you consider voting for a Republican?
If I thought that millions.
Oh, hell yeah. Hell yeah. And as a matter of fact, I would make the moral argument that if you vote against it, you're fucking dumb as shit. Absolutely, Aaron. Holy shit. This is actually something that's going to piss me off. I'm not sure where Aaron's actually going to end up on this question, but I almost feel like you're morally compelled to. So let's invert the moral scenario. I think that's what she did, where let's say Republicans, they wanted to deregulate vast swaths of the government, which could be based, but it depends on how it's done. Let's say that they wanted to institute like silencers and forced reset triggers, and they wanted to eliminate tax stamps, and they wanted to make guns more accessible, and they wanted to start teaching gun classes in high school. All this stuff is so based, by the way. God, I wish the Republican Party was like this. Let's say they wanted to do all that, and this was completely contradictory to a left-wing perspective. But let's say they wanted to keep up USAID, and they wanted to keep up all these social services that actually keep people alive. And then let's say the Democrats had a fiscal conservative bent, and they wanted to cut all these programs, potentially killing tens of millions of people. Yeah, Just because guns and the degree to which mixed economy capitalism is implemented are important things for you, if you vote to kill 14 million people, I think you're a fucking asshole. I tell that to MAGA every single day. I say, I think you guys are dicks, because what we're cutting is $10 billion. If Trump wanted to, and by the way, I would actually support him in this, if he said, we are no longer interested in wielding soft power in the way that we have in the past, which he has said, therefore, we're looking for partners in Europe and Asia and Africa to take on approximately $10 billion in economic activity. We want to draw down USAID and we want to draw down PEPFAR and we want to transfer it to other people. That way they take on the financial burden. And we are going to have a sane cool down into them taking responsibility. I wouldn't give a shit. I would not care at all. I would be like, yeah, sure. The rest of the world does need to take on a broader responsibility when it comes to these social programs. I would not give a fuck. The reason why I care is because we abruptly stopped the programs. There's no plans to fund them. We're not working with international partners in order to make sure that these people still get the aid they need. And as a result, we're going to kill an estimated 14 million people from diphtheria, cholera, dengue, malaria, and AIDS. So yeah, 100%, Aaron, 100%. Let's see what Hutch says to that.
If people, like less people would die if I voted for a Republican, I would consider voting for a Republican. Wouldn't
Based, Hutch, based.
Democrats are the same on every other. You said you can't even think of a single thing you agree with Republicans on. In this hypothetical, Democrats have the exact same platform. So that means you agree with them on gun reform. That means healthcare. That means you agree with them on tax bills and budgets and capital management, like all of that. Just the one thing is the USAID cut. You would actually consider switching to voting for Republicans.
Yes.
Because of that one policy.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's 14 million fucking people and I'm not a GD monster, Aaron.
Really?
Yes,
Why?
of course. Because a fundamental principle of like my political engagement is harm reduction. Like I take the trolley problem seriously. And so if I thought that
seriously, but like there's other things besides just that too.
The crawling chaos is once you go far enough left, you get your guns back. Yeah, so you can be a fucking cringe LARPing revolutionary. Don't sell me that shit, crawling chaos. I know what the fuck you're doing. You're saying, oh, if you go far enough left, you become a Marxist-Leninist so you can destroy the capitalist imperialist machine. Don't sell me on that. I've been in Twitch and YouTube politics long enough.
To factor in if we're making these sorts of moral calculuses, and it just becomes a numbers game, because then from there it's like, but those Republicans also want to cut Medicaid, and Medicaid, that's
whatever. 4690 says, okay, then found out what it needs for Connor to vote Trump. Yeah, the Democrats need to be demonstrably more monstrous. Whatever. You understand that I would prefer a Republican. I just think that Republicans use rhetoric that appeals to me and then don't implement any policy that appeals to me. Crawling Chaos is touchy today. Yeah, well, you know. You're right.
It's going to kick tens of millions of people off of it as well. How is that a greater harm than the USAID cuts? Is it worse to be more concerned about Americans than people abroad or whatever dying from neglect versus, like, you know?
Okay.
This?
Can I spin the question around on you, but change it?
Yes. Do it, Hutch. Do it. Do it. Do it.
A little bit?
Sure.
If you knew that by voting for a Republican, you could prevent 4 billion people from dying, would you vote for the Republican?
It would depend on what Democrats are proposing. I would need to know.
Aaron is saying, if I get universal health care, gun control, and a host of other left-wing policies, I'll kill 4 million people as long as I get what I want. You have to admire the sociopathy on some level. It's actually it's great lizard brain thinking. I like that she just owned it. Nice.
Let's say the Democrats let's say the Democrats platform was fucking like literally 100% what you want, but 4 billion people would die. Would you still vote for the Democrat?
Well, 4 billion is crazy. That's like 2/3 of the planet.
And it's like passively because
Oh, billion? Oh, okay. Yeah, K is saying billion. KO Dave said billion. That's 2/3 of the planet. That's fucking psycho shit. Yeah, that's crazy.
So the same way the USAID cuts.
Yeah, we'll just say yeah.
I guess I would consider it at that point, but again, it comes down to
Consider it at that point. Yeah, dude, if 2/3 of the planet is going to get wiped out, I will vote for whatever party is not going to wipe out 2/3 of the planet. That's so obvious. I think she probably heard million too.
but I don't think it's comparable with what you're saying entirely, because you also have to factor in that you would be voting for a party that's anti-vax, that doesn't think climate change is real.
Okay, but we're talking about 4 billion people, Aaron. I think he should emphasize the B. Okay, B. The B with the boy.
That wants to kick people, take away healthcare from people, and that wants to install Supreme Court judges that could be disastrous for minority rights, equal rights, and just constitutional protections for every single American. That always has to be weighed against these numbers, right?
Yeah, I would take a look at projections for how each individual policy is expected to, have an impact in terms of lives lost or, any number of other variables. But if you give me an option to save 14 million people by voting for a Republican in one election, I'm going to think about it at minimum,
You better, or I think you're a piece of shit.
That's just a really...
Think about it. You said you would do it.
Yeah.
I would do it.
I think I'd probably do it. Yeah. That's a lot of, people.
That's 2 or 3 Holocausts. That's pretty much everybody who died in World War II. Yes, it's a big deal.
But I would consider doing it, but I also have to consider all of the other things, because we're talking about unseen harms, right? We're not talking about, there is a difference between perpetuating an active and aiding and abetting an active genocide, transferring weapons and contributing directly to that, versus a cut and somebody's going to die from neglect. Because would you say if I
she's using Republican talking points. Yo, where's Shadow 2 Bravo, bro? I found a communist that you're gonna like. Shadow 2 Bravo, old school, whatever. And a few other people. I'm not sure if they're all on Twitter, but people like these characters that are in our chat. They hit me with that all the time, where they're like, well, cutting AIDS funding isn't the same as actively killing those people, and these Africans should just learn to stop having sex. So if little AIDS babies get infected and die, it's no skin off of my ass. And Aaron actually just made the same argument. Yo, Aaron is cold as hell. Aaron is a cold-blooded killer. You gotta watch out. No wonder why she likes Destiny. That is crazy. All right. Check it with chat real quick, because that was funny. Melody says, what Dem control gun measures are you willing to sign off on? Maybe not liking them too much. I hate magazine limits. I hate assault weapons bans. I think all that shit is cringe. I do think that full auto should be regulated. I think it is a dangerous technology. It's just dangerous technology. It enables terrorism so easily and mass shootings so easily that I do think full auto should still be regulated. I would probably deregulate silencers and suppressors, because they don't do what people think they do. So I would totally deregulate suppressors. I would bring back, high school, middle school gun education classes, 100%. And effectively, I would have 2 classes. One class would be with BB guns, and you would basically teach the kids how to safely handle a firearm. And then the other class would be you don't want to touch guns. Here's how to safely deal with a firearm that becomes in your presence. Basically, how to make sure you don't blow your own head off while you're safely calling law enforcement in order to get rid of the gun, right? You find a gun on a street, you need to know how to handle it so you don't hurt yourself or others. Then I would do that. And then emergency red flag laws, I'm all for it. I get it. A lot of people don't like it, but they don't like the due process aspect of it. I would bolster the due process aspect of it, where you basically have to see the judge Because a red flag law is cops come to your house and they confiscate your guns, right? So I think you would need to see a judge within like a week in order to determine whether or not the red flag law is valid. And I feel like if the red flag is more than 30 days, you would need to see effectively a jury of your peers within 30 days to determine whether or not your Second Amendment right was temporarily revoked. And it would need to be evaluated every 6 months or every 12 months. I don't think that we should leave that just up to judges. I think judges will abuse the shit out of it. Whatever says, would it be fair to say that USAID thing is like watching a person drown while not being at fault directly for their death? Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yeah, if it's half the planet, you better vote for the other person, right? I thought they said million. Yeah. I thought they said million. Thanos did nothing wrong meme. Yeah. Yo. She was crazy on this one. Oh, Christian Valeris, you son of a bitch. This is a Destiny level joke. He says, Christian Valeris, well, 1.2 billion are Indians and another 1.4 billion are Chinese. You son of a bitch. What if half the planet? What if it was just Asia that got nuked? Wow, Christian Valeris. I don't even know if you meant to imply that. That was crazy. This is happening. It says, now do a trolley meme with a MAGA guy choosing between 4 billion deaths and releasing the Epstein files. Ooh, that's what they're doing on Twitter all day right now. Wow. Aaron is definitely a communist. Yeah. She's like, you know what? What's a few million people amongst friends? What's a few million deaths amongst friends? True. All right, I'm going to try to hit like a climax, like a crescendo on this. This has been a really funny conversation, by the way. And then I'm probably going to wrap and move into the next segment. But that's mad funny. I'm not going to lie. Having the communists be like, well, if 14 million people were guaranteed going to die, but then you would get all of the policies that you've ever wanted. And Aaron, the communist, is like, yeah, that's a deal I would make. That's very Maoist of her. Nice.
Abstain from donating to a charity that guarantees it saves 2 people every single month. Me not doing that is tantamount to me killing those 2 people.
No, I wouldn't say that that's exactly the same thing. Like we're talking, like I feel like a government structure
So what's the difference?
It intuitively feels different. I'd have to think about like why I feel like that's different.
No, bump stocks are cringe. Bump stocks, they suck. They're like a range toy thing. They don't effectively turn your weapon into a full auto. You don't need a bump stock in order to bump fire a weapon.
Yeah, I mean, like if you're giving me a more extreme example, like if you say like, well, if you donate $5 to this charity, you could save like I don't know. That's a good question, and I have to think about it. But intuitively, it feels very different.
But that's where I'm coming from, is that to me, like, it should feel intuitively very different because you can make these calculations, but like, let's use your USAID thing, because what you said is, do you mind if I play it actually for my stream, like the moment in your VOD where you said it?
Yeah, that's fine. Obviously, that's death on a scale that human beings can't comprehend. It's horrifying. I cannot imagine being subjected to those kinds of conditions. And yet, when we are confronted with the...
Hold on. I'm going to rewind and actually listen to Hutch. But Hedonic Treadmill says, would you be in favor of some kind of mandatory national service? Scott Galloway talks about it as a way to motivate our youth and give everyone a sense of community. No, I don't. I would not do that in the United States as it presently exists. If the United States collapses and we're creating a new government, though, then I would 100% tie the franchise, the right to vote specifically. I would tie it to 2 years or 4 years of public service. It doesn't have to be in the military. You could work for the post office. You could be a cop. You could go to Doctors Without Borders. You could join the Red Cross. You could do whatever. shit, you could even work in restaurant and retail. If you worked restaurant and retail for 2 years, I would view that as public service. But the point is that, yeah, if I could create society from scratch, I would do it. Implementing it in the United States right now, not only do I think it's unfeasible and unpopular, I think there would be knock-on secondary effects that don't make sense. Starting from scratch, yes. Modern society, no.
The moment in your VOD where you said it.
Yeah, that's fine. Obviously, that's death on a scale that human beings can't comprehend. It's horrifying. I cannot imagine being subjected to those kinds of conditions. And yet, when we are confronted with the potential global impact of winding down our USAID programs, estimates are that 14 million people are going to die. Can we just pause on that for a second? How many people globally have died from COVID? Was that the gist of it, or is there another thing here?
Yeah. You'll talk about like COVID deaths. Or,
Yeah.
Okay. So my point with showing that is like, I guess this is
I'm gonna watch Erin use her lizard commie brain to justify millions of deaths, and then we'll move into the next segment.
like this logic or whatever followed to its natural conclusion is almost like any funding denied to USAID or declining to expand it is tantamount to consciously increasing like a death count.
No, I didn't say consciously.
But
how do you get rid of your screen? Because your screen is still on my screen here. Stop watching. There we go.
Yeah, there you go.
Dude, Erin is replicating right-wing anti-USAID talking points perfectly, and it's actually scary. Like this is, I'm not gonna lie, Erin, if you see this clip, this is sociopath shit, 100%. She's like, well, is us denying little baby AIDS care, is that the same as us shooting in the head? I don't think so. And it's like, yes, of course, you're fundamentally correct. But the point is, if you're paying for the AIDS baby's care and you have the capacity to draw it down over several years and making sure that baby still receives care, but somebody else starts paying it, are you less morally culpable for that AIDS baby's death than if you abruptly just stop care? And the obvious answer is yes. This is so funny. Watching a communist being like, yeah, fuck them AIDS kids.
It's tantamount to like increasing a death count because like you're saying it's almost like there's almost functionally no different between.
True. Fatsimo says not donating to Connor results in the starvation of 10 potential kids that Connor is predicted to have by 2040. Unironically true, Fatsimo.
But by withholding aid, there's like almost no difference between like intentionally killing them, or people should almost conceive of it that way.
I don't know. I don't think
What you mean? Feel free to clarify.
No, I don't think that. I don't think I'm saying that. I know I'm not saying that people are consciously choosing to kill this or that person because they vote. But like any, especially presidential election, because this is just such an impactful, influential position on the global stage. Or why don't I just compare it to like so.
I don't want to compare it anymore. We can wrap it up. I think that's actually mad funny. I am going to DM Erin and be like, let's talk about your communism and let's talk about your fucking lizard brain sociopathy. Because that was crazy. I was like, let's, yeah, like if I get every policy I've ever wanted, but we killed 20 million AIDS babies, then yeah, fuck those AIDS babies. That's crazy. Yeah, she's Donna Treadmill says the legit scary communist. Yes, she would line you up against the wall. She would smoke your ass if it came down. If you were standing between Erin and communist utopia, she 100% would smoke you. She would drop you like a sack of potatoes, bro. She would kill you so fast. Oh my God. All right, so let's summarize it real quick. Let's try to steelman everybody. In the intro, Erin says that she cares about electoralism, based. I hate the fact that she's a communist, but that's cool that she cares about actually minimizing harm, quote unquote, through electoral participation. I myself hate electoralism. I think it's a necessary evil. And then when it comes to policy or criticism of Contra, Aaron said that the heat of the incident, our complicity in genocide, et cetera, compels us to criticize Natalie because she's obviously sitting on her hands and being morally neutral in a situation that shouldn't be morally neutral. But I think Hutch astutely observes and is fundamentally correct in the fact that Contra is criticizing left-wing behavior that is counterproductive to their espoused aims. That's the summary of the situation. But what we really found out today is that Aaron is a fucking sociopath, a sociopathic communist who 100% would line up all the liberals against the wall and put them to death if it meant that she got to usher in her communist utopia. And we also learned that, you know, fuck them AIDS kids, apparently. That's another position that Aaron holds. Fuck them AIDS kids. Oh, that was crazy. That was a crazy piece of content. That is wild. That is genuinely wild. You love you like a brother. You have a great day. And chat, I got to run. I got to go take care of the wife. So bye for now.
Peace.
Bye.